Oh, good morning, Hythloday. I enjoyed your video and took some notes. So, where am I starting? I'm gonna start with Flatland. So there's this game called Millie Borns, which is 1,000 miles in French, is the name of the game, and it's about racing. It's a little card game, and you play a card. This has 40 on it, and you've gone 40 miles. It's kind of the setup of the game. There's also a game called Grass, and it's functionally exactly like Millie Borns. I guess maybe there's 2 additional cards in there, but it's the same game, right? You play a card that says 40 on it, and now you've got 40 kilos of marijuana. And it's a race to see who can get 10,000 pounds of marijuana first or something like that. Now, while these games are, the rules are the same and the cards are the same, people get a different feeling when playing the game. When you're playing Grass, you kind of feel a little guilty, right? Like you're doing something illegal in your mind, right? Where the racing game, you don't get that feeling, even though the same game. And this has, this works in game theory, not in the theoretical side of game theory, but when we test game theory and make actual people play these games in the real world, there's something you can do where you can take the Prisoner's Dilemma game and play it with a bunch of people, and then take that same payout matrix, right? But describe the game as a game of chicken, right? So taking the cooperative move is somehow backing off, and then the Nash equilibrium is where they both crash. And so when you frame the payout matrix in that connotation, people are less likely to cooperate, right? Because, well, there's something socially wrong with being a rat and tattling on the other person, right? We don't want to be a rat. We don't want to be a tattle. We also don't want to be a chicken. We don't want to be a coward. And so, even though the payout matrix is the same, if you describe it differently, then people will play the game differently. So it's very interesting. So I just want to point out that it wasn't just Flat War that you were playing yesterday. It was Lord of the Rings Flat War, and that might add something. So, look, man, you're saying the ability to scrutinize a concept makes me dumber than a monkey. I think I'm not going to agree to that, like, obviously. So, it's about abstraction, and abstraction happens in the mind. I don't actually have to hold 2 things to say 2. I don't have to draw a circle around them to say 2. I can point at those 2 things, or I can just look at those 2 things, or think about these 2 things and say 2. Let's say I was put in this test, and they're like, if you go that door where there's 2 things, then you get food. And if you go to that door, there's 3 things, you get no food. And I go to the door with 3 things. And they're like, well, why'd you do that? I'm like, well, there's 3 things, right? There's 3 pairs of 2. Give me 3 foods. And then I'll be like, well, the game doesn't work like that, you know? So it's good to talk about abstraction. Yes, it's a rabbit hole. It goes down forever. And that's, I think you were wondering about what is the fundamental, you're asking me what is the fundamental contradiction in the universe. And my first thought is that, well, contradictions aren't really fundamental. They're so commonplace, they're mundane. But the fact that we're trying to describe something that's infinitely complex with systems that aren't infinitely complex. That's kind of the problem. And the more we make the systems complex, the more they will contradict each other. The actual system of rules that we're using for reasoning, for logic, or whatnot. We've already said that we will allow for provisional agreements of truth, right? That we can provisionally agree to what does a word mean. Now, you're right. There's some weaseliness there, right? Where if I'm arguing with someone and they say, well, the sky is blue, and I say words don't mean anything. I mean, that's a cop-out, right? That's not what I'm trying to do. I want to explore the paradox of, well, what is blueness? What is the sky? And get deeper into it, as opposed to taking things at face value. And this works, even when things are false. You could say, well, for the sake of argument, assume the sky is made of marshmallows. And I can agree to that. I can say, okay, I will agree to this is true, even though we know it's false. So, we go down the rabbit hole. There's no end, but there's always new things to learn. And, yeah, it's tedious. And at some point we want to go back up the rabbit hole and, talk about conservation of information and this kind of stuff. But the tediousness does give us opportunity, right, to make videos about what are relationships in some formal sense. How does X relate to Y? And how does bananas relate to monkeys? And how does value relate to understanding? I think there's a number of people on YouTube that haven't heard that lecture. They may have not had mathematical analysis class. They may have never watched a mathematical analysis video. So I don't know if we'll get anything out of it, but I think that oh, I hate the morning. I think there's benefit to exploring the paradox and making videos about it and going back and forth with the conversation so that we can push each other in ways that we wouldn't have gone down otherwise. I wasn't planning on making a video about relationships, but now I might. And so that's a good thing. So that's all my notes. I think your video was great, and I'm enjoying the conversation, and it's okay to say that your viewpoint makes you dumber than a monkey. I'm not offended, right? It's okay. I mean, I think it's wrong, but I think, there's nothing wrong with saying it. So, anyways, I will catch you next time. Have a nice day.